Hey everyone, welcome to the Matt Walsh Lite show. It's 5:30 a.m. Sitting in my car. Wife and kids are sleeping. It's just been really busy, so haven't had time to film any videos. Usually I arrange an appointment with my videographer, and we sit down and we do the props and stuff, but don't have time. So since I've done the Ben Shapiro Lite show, I figured, hey, why not do the Matt Walsh Lite show? So much easier to do it. So this is just an experiment. But the title of today's show is A Likely Story. It's about Brett Kavanaugh and Dr. Blasey Ford accusations. And normally I didn't want to say anything, but I really felt like the whole situation has gotten so out of hand, 100% partisan on all sides. And so I haven't really heard anyone kind of giving any kind of reasonable take on the situation. And the closest is Ben Shapiro. Because Ben Shapiro said something that a lot of Republicans aren't willing to say. And I think it's important that we say it. And if you're a conservative, repeat after me. If it's true, it's disqualifying. I know it's hard. Let's try one more time. If it's true, no. I know there's a lot of excuses. There's a lot of suspicious motivation in your minds, but just say it one time so we're clear, so there's no doubt. If it's true, it's disqualifying. Doesn't matter how long ago it was. If it's true, as stated, it's disqualifying. One more time. If it's true, it's disqualifying. Okay? Now, for my liberal friends, repeat after me. Women can lie too. Doesn't mean they do. I know 99% of accusations are more likely to be true, but for the sake of fairness, for the sake of understanding your conservative fellow citizens, say it after me, women can lie too. I know it's hard. I'm not saying that Dr. Blasey Ford is lying. In fact, as I will explain later, I don't think she is, but I need you to say it with me one more time. All together now, women can lie too. Very good. All right. So, now that we've got that off our chest, let me tell you a likely story. I purposely chose that word because it can be interpreted two ways, right? It can be interpreted sarcastically, or it can be interpreted literally. And I think this is what most likely happened. And what most likely happened, and I'm giving this about an 87% chance of being exactly what happened, or close enough. And if you want to know why 87%, all the math and the calculations are in the description below. But an 87% true that what happened is actually very close to how Dr. Blasey Ford remembered it. In the sense that she went to a party when she was very young. She was accosted by two drunk men who probably did not have a conscious attempt to rape her, but were so inebriated. And even the way she describes their kind of playful interaction and their wrestling with each other, that they probably, in their drunken state, even could convince themselves that she was playing along too. Right? So obviously she was scared of being raped, and then she mentioned she was scared that she might accidentally be killed, which kind of gives you an idea of how out of it these two guys were. And because afterwards she ran into the bathroom and then she ran home, no one at the party would remember her being there. If it was an otherwise uneventful party, then it's very possible Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh woke up the next morning with no memory of the event. And this is important. When people get drunk, we know they do stupid things. We know people can do things they don't remember. And this is not an excuse. In fact, it's the opposite. It's still disqualifying if they were drunk and did this, right? Because they allowed a dangerous situation to happen and they traumatized someone as a result of their actions. And the issue about what you do when you're drunk was pretty definitively concluded by MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, right? All these people were dying because of drunk drivers, and they were getting off on manslaughter charges. They were saying, oh, I was drunk, it was an accident, I didn't mean to kill anyone. And MAD basically came out and said, no, sorry, you get drunk, and then you get into a car, that is intentional negligence, it's murder. And they kind of changed the state of how drunk driving was prosecuted. And it's the same with attempted rape, it's the same with rape. Being drunk is not an excuse. Now, so what does that mean? Well, it means Brett Kavanaugh is probably not lying. And I know that's really hard to accept if you hate him and you're on the left. But he probably genuinely does not remember what happened. And neither does Mark Judge. So what you have here is this really unfortunate situation where someone was traumatized, but traumatized by people who don't remember doing it. And of course, for everyone else at the event, their testimony doesn't matter because it was so long ago that they're not going to remember being there. And here's the thing about memory. Take one event where you were with two other people when you were very young, that you remember, that you enjoyed, you have a very clear memory of it, and go ask them how they remember it. I did this in the summer with my siblings. When we were very young, we used to go to this store on a certain holiday, and we would get potato chips and ice cream and soda, and we'd eat till we were sick, right? That was my memory of it. My sister has no recollection of the event, even though I remember her being there with my brother. And my brother remembers it completely differently, right? He's like, oh, no, we weren't allowed ice cream, all right? So I'm just saying that because I'm actually saying that the witnesses who say they weren't there, which was one of the excuses that the Republicans used to discredit Dr. Ford, isn't really valid after this time, right? She could remember it perfectly, and the way she described it actually is perfectly plausible. And there would be no evidence, and this is the difficult thing about this situation. If we're really honest, if we sit down and we're like, why are we in this situation? Because something happened and there was no evidence and there's no proof. The problem with that, though, is that's probably true for 1 million women, right? Hopefully not that many, but this kind of stuff happens consistently to people, and this is why the left gets so outraged by the accusations of lying, and they're justified in that outrage because this happens to a lot of people. And it's a terrible thing about the world we live in, about men-women relationships. Women are often abused and don't speak out, and they don't get any justice their whole lives, and it affects them their whole lives. And so the reason it's disqualifying, let's be very crystal clear, even though Brett Kavanaugh has been an outstanding moral person the rest of his life, right? Even though he was a virgin in high school and, he might have only dated 2 or 3 people before he got married, he hurt somebody. Even if it was an accident, he hurt somebody, and that affected their life. And that is why it's disqualifying. And if we don't recognize that, if you're conservative and you can't accept that, then there's a real problem in our country that has to be fixed, right? We have to recognize when people have been hurt. Now, here's why it's only 87%, though, and this, I'm going to jump over to the conservative side here, is because I think in most cases, outside of any context, 98% of the time, there'd be absolutely no issue. Oh, my light went out. Did my battery die? No. Would be no issue with the accusation. The problem is how much motivation there is to lie. And the other problem, and this is a problem that I think would be hard for liberals to accept, is you do not want to create an environment where people can get away with false accusations. And I know it's either people get away with hurting people or people get away with false accusations and hurting people, but you need to ask yourself, what's the standard for an accusation? What is the minimum standard of evidence? And I'm saying this believing that even without evidence, it was the right thing to do for Dr. Blasey Ford to come out and tell her story. absolutely think she was 100% correct, and it is one of the things that is making me so upset about this situation is that she was absolutely right to be scared to do it. And that's on the conservatives, especially the conservative base that is just instantly assuming she's a liar. It's, even if you believe she's a liar, you should wait and give her the benefit of the doubt. Because what we want is we want someone to come forward, even if they don't have evidence, because what it might do is it might inspire other victims to come forward who have more evidence. And even the more victims that come out, the more evidence it creates, right? So, everyone was like, oh, it's 30 years. Like, that is rubbish. That is pure crap, trash. Do not say that. Do not mention how much time has passed, because that is part of the problem. So when Dr. Blasey Ford comes out with this accusation, everyone should have just taken a step back and go, okay, is this true? That should have been the first question, because if it's true, it's disqualifying. So she comes out, she makes her accusation. Unfortunately, there's no evidence. And that happens a lot. And I'm going to say this. There are a lot of women out there who have no evidence. But it's still true. And it still happened to them. And we have to accept that as a reality. But they should be able to come forward without being called liars. Right? That doesn't mean then that the person accused should be punished without evidence. We need to have evidence. We need to have due process, even though it's not a criminal trial. And I see a lot of people going, it's not a criminal trial, we don't need due process, we just need a lower standard of evidence. Fine, I actually agree with that. We don't have to go to court, we don't have to have a jury, it doesn't have to be beyond a reasonable doubt. But there needs to be some evidence. There needs to be something, right? I mean, Brett Kavanaugh is in such a difficult situation if he is innocent, because there's no way he can prove his innocence, right? And even though he's trying to find any records he has of that year, for people that are mocking him for having a calendar from that year. I have journal entries, I have diaries, I have like little ticket stubs. Like, some people just like to collect stuff from their childhood, and I have yearbooks and letters from people going back 30 years, right? Well, not 30 years, 20 years. I'm not that old. So that's the point. But like from when I was 12. So that's not ridiculous either, but there's no way he can disprove it, right? If he was home for a weekend in the summer of 82, then it could have been that weekend, right? So this comes up to the questions that the liberals are avoiding, which is, what is the standard for credible accusation? And they're being hypocritical. And they know they're being hypocritical, and they're being political. And that's what makes this so disgusting, because it creates an environment where everything seems political, where everything seems like it's just to support one party or the other. And I really have to ask, if this was a black nominee from President Barack Obama and a white woman from Tennessee who attended Tea Party rallies came out with the exact same accusation that Blasey Ford did, how would you react? Would your reaction genuinely be the same? And I'm very confident that it would. And so the reason I'm saying 13% is there is incredibly strong motivation for someone to come forward. If there's going to be a time that someone's going to lie, it's going to be against a rich and powerful person that they disagree with, or that they don't like, or that they hate, right? And this is the stance that, supporters of Bill Clinton took when he was being accused. It's like, oh, it's because he's running for president, it's because people want, this visibility, like they want to make money off a book deal, they want to take down a powerful man. There is incentive, there is strong incentive, especially, and this is my final point, before any of this came out, there was mass hysteria around Kavanaugh's nomination, that it would be the end of the world if he was nominated. So of course there's motivation, if you actually believe that, and a lot of people did. A lot of people believed that Kavanaugh's nomination will destroy the country, right? And so it's this hysteria from both sides on every issue that creates an environment where you're like, well, look, I knew Kavanaugh. I didn't like him when he was young. We were in a party together. I don't remember what happened, but, I could make up an allegation because, I'm doing it for the greater good. And again, to be crystal clear, I don't think that's what happened with Dr. Blasey Ford. I think there's too much around her testimony that's credible. I'm very glad she came forward, and I want to reiterate that. I think that Brett Kavanaugh was being incredibly irresponsible as a young adult. I think that's something a lot of teenagers do because they don't understand the danger of drinking. But I think at the end of the day, if people cannot provide evidence, or if coming forward does not bring more people forward, and I can't really count Ramirez's testimony because she's not sure, right? And she was kind of pushed into it, and I definitely can't count anything Michael Avenatti says unless he actually produces some evidence. Then it's just really, we don't want to be in a world where people can be brought down without evidence. And I genuinely do believe that liberals believe that if they take a step back. If they're like, okay, what's fair, right? How do we condemn people without evidence? Or at least without multiple accusations. And a lot of liberals believe there will be more accusations coming forward. They actually believe that he was a serial, this was a serial problem for him, because usually there's a pattern of behavior. I genuinely believe that it's most likely true. Most likely it was a mistake that is disqualifying, but there's too much margin for error. And for the greater good, for the purpose of having a fair and stable society, we should nominate Brett Kavanaugh. Although I really, really hope that he genuinely believes he's innocent. Because if he knows he did something wrong, then it's just unconscionable. Ugh. Can't speak this early in the morning. It's just terrible. It's just awful if he knows that he did this and he's fighting back. So that's my two thoughts. Matt Walsh show Lite at 5:30 in the morning. But I just felt I really had to say something. I just hate how partisan something like this is, and it really shouldn't be. This really should be about finding the truth, but also about being sensitive and aware of the difficulty in coming forward with allegations. And I think that's something that the conservative side, the Republicans, are really messing up on. That it's really not good the way they're approaching this. I have to give Ben Shapiro credit. He really is one of the only people I've heard say, if it's true, it's disqualifying. I think that needs to be a mantra among the Republican Party to show that they have credibility, to show that actually, yes, we care about sexual assault. So, those are my final thoughts. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll have a more professional video done next month. All the best.